Hello, I'm Chuck Wolf, Chief Executive for Charles J. Wolf Associates, LLC. As a motivational speaker and a leadership consultant and executive coach and trainer, I often work with very successful people in their companies. Since many can't afford a professional, I volunteer to host a radio talk show called The Emotion Roadmap, Take the Wheel and Control How You Feel, on a nonprofit community radio station in Bridgeport, Connecticut, WPKN. My reason for doing the show is to share with as many people as possible this wonderful process for helping people manage their own emotions and their relationships with others. My goal is for everyone listening to learn to use the Emotion Roadmap to make life better. As you listen to me, help others, I hope you are also learning. As a Simsbury resident, I'm delighted to be able to make the show available through Simsbury TV. To learn more, go to my website, www.emotionroadmap.com. Thank you for listening and watching. And this is Chuck Wolf. You're listening to the Emotion Roadmap. Take the wheel and control how you feel. Nice to be back here with you. It's starting in the month of June now. I'm here for 2 weeks. But next week, I just want to let everybody know I have a program that I've done in the past, and I wanted to do it in the beginning of the summer in June, in the sense of the timing, I think, is really important. It's a program that I did about helping people get situated correctly for starting college. When people graduate and they're finishing high school and they're about to enter the next part of their journey, the next chapter of their lives, and they're going off to school, there's a lot of anxious moments. There's a lot of excitement. There's a lot of energy. And there's a lot to get done. There's a lot of organization that needs to take place. And so one of the things that I encourage people to think about and to do is to get involved with planning in a very constructive, thoughtful, methodical way so that some of the anxiety is lifted. Because one of the things that helps people to cope with anxiety is to know what's coming and to plan effectively to prepare yourself for it. So one thing that I did a few years back that got great reviews, is one of my favorite shows that I've done over the years that I've been here. And by the way, you're listening to Chuck Wolf, and this is the Emotion Roadmap. Take the wheel and control how you feel. And thank you for everybody for tuning in. For those of you who are regular listeners, if you're first joining the show is all about helping people to manage their own emotions and to influence the emotions of others in positive and constructive ways. And one of the ways that I want to address the show next week is to help you to think about how you get ready for college, how you get ready to move away from home, how to get ready to leave the place that you've been most of your life. Perhaps many of you probably listening to the show have lived in one place if you're a high school senior for most of your years, gone to one school system. Now, some of you, of course, have moved a few times, so you at least have that experience of what it feels like to move. But for many, it's their first real big move. And you're no longer living in a home with the people that you've depended on for most of your life to help to guide you and to protect you and to set boundaries for you. And all of a sudden, you're out there on your own. And I'm going to play a show next week that hopefully helps you all prepare. So if you know anybody, particularly for young girls or young women off going that transition between, senior in high school to freshman in college, and you know that you've got people that are a little bit anxious about that, and they're wondering, how do you manage all these feelings that you're having? There was a great show that I did with two people. One of whom was working at the time at the station, and she was actually working as a programmer part-time during her high school years, and then a girlfriend of hers. They were going different places, and I also had a woman who was an advisor to college freshmen coming in who works at the University of Hartford. And together we talked about all the possibilities of what is it that you really have to be thoughtful about. What should you be doing to help prepare yourself? What are the questions that you have when you're about to experience going off for a new beginning, this new chapter, going off to college? And what are some of the ways that you can help yourself to get ready and to manage your anxiety by doing the things that sound like they're the right things to be doing as you prepare yourself to get ready to go off to school? And I thought I'd play it in June because it's a good time to actually have people think about this, because you got a couple months yet before people actually take off. So I hope you tune in next week. I won't be here for the show, but I'll have our general manager just put this, play the sound tape from the show that I did a few years back, and hopefully you all find it really enjoyable and helpful. And if you know somebody who's off to college, beginning next year, particularly young women, but it works for young men as well, because we all have things that we got to be dealing with when we're going off and starting new chapters. But I had 3 daughters, so I was particularly concerned about young girls going off to school, and I still have 3 daughters, and they did great. But in any case, there were a lot of things that we worried about when they first took off, and I thought this show would be really helpful in helping people to deal emotionally with what's to come. So I encourage you to tune in next week and to listen to the show. And if you know people, again, who have their children, their daughters and their sons who are first going off to college for the first time ever, I think you'll want them to tune in. It is just a helpful way to guide them in the experiences they're having and the feelings that they're having, and helping them to manage how they feel and how their children feel, and how they're all feeling about this experience. About when a family member leaves, it changes the whole dynamic for the family. So it isn't just the particular child who's going off, but everybody else has got feelings too. The people that are left behind, the other daughters and sons that might be in the family, and the mom and dad if they're both there, or whoever it is that's raising the children. So, it's really important, I think, to get a handle on what's to come. And when you have big events in your life with very strong, powerful emotional content, it's helpful to prepare for them. That's a lot of what the show is about, is helping you to manage your emotions, helping you to plan for emotional experiences. And one of the things I want to talk about this week, and it's an interesting topic, is procrastination. Because some of you may hear about this and think, well, yeah, I do have to get a lot of things done before school starts next year for my daughter, my son, and so forth. But I got time. It's only June. It's still early. And so the thing I want to talk about this week is procrastination. Procrastination, all my life, has been seen as a time management problem. Why do people procrastinate? And I can hear some of you out there right now in your own head saying, oh, really? This is going to be about procrastination? Great, because I'm guilty as charged of being someone who procrastinates. Well, one of the things that a really curious article crossed my desk the other day, and I thought, well, boy, that's an interesting topic for the show. It's that procrastination really isn't about time management. It's about emotion management. Isn't that interesting? At least that's what I thought. And then so I'm going to take I have a paper with me that is a printed copy of the article. So there's a few points I thought that were worth kind of referring to as we talk about it. So anyway, I'd like to have a few topics that I talk about. I also want to I've been doing a theme sort of on coaching, and it's what I've done for a living for a long time. And there's all kinds of playoffs going on now. The Bruins are involved with St. Louis Blues, the Boston Bruins, for the hockey championship, and the Toronto Raptors are playing the Golden State Warriors in a basketball championship. And there's a lot of state tournaments happening right now, and college baseball tournaments. There's all kinds of things going on. And coaching is happening all the time in sports. But coaching doesn't just happen in sports. We coach our children about how to get up every day and face adversity. We coach our children when they're dealing with a bully. We coach our children when they're failing at school. We coach our children when they're having difficulty with their friendships. We coach all the time, but sometimes we're not reflective, and we don't step back, and we don't really think about the fact that we are actually coaching. And I'd like to spend a little bit of time this morning also talking about, so what makes a good coach? And it's funny how different it is. So one of the things that perhaps we'll talk about as well is just this idea of when you were coached at some point in your life, what made it work for you? I'd like to address that as well. So a couple of themes. Procrastination isn't so much a time management problem as it is an emotion management problem. I just love saying that. I think that's really thoughtful and really smart. And then the other is, when you have been coached, when you have had a coaching experience, I like to listen to your experiences if you feel comfortable calling and sharing them with me, because what I want people to understand is all the different ways people experience coaching that work. Because what works for one person possibly will work for someone else, or you may need a whole different approach. And I'd like to just emphasize the diversity of approaches, because it's really interesting in my work that I've done over the years in multiple fields related to behavioral science and psychology and mental health and all these other areas. It's always been curious to me that we don't all respond the same. And yet, when we want to be fair with someone else, if we want to treat someone else with respect, and we want to treat someone with the best possible intentions, we treat them in a way that would be reflective of how we'd want to be treated if we were on the receiving end of whatever it is that we're going to be doing or saying. And that's a great place to start, but then you shouldn't stop there. And this is where most people stop, is, you do what seems fair and reasonable to you. But what if the person that you're dealing with is very different than you, and different than most other people that you know or have dealt with in the past, and they don't respond the way you would have expected? And you need to deal with them differently. And that's also part of what we talk about on this show, because when we talk about how do you influence the emotions of somebody else, you start off thinking about, if I wanted this person to feel a certain way, and if it was me, I'd treat them this way. But they're not me. And so if they're not me, how are they the same as me? And how are they different? And do the differences suggest a possible difference in the way I might treat them? Because often they do. And if you really want to influence somebody else, you start with what would influence you, but you don't end there. You keep thinking about what you think is fair, and then you try to understand, if you were them and you understood them as best you can, knowing they're different than you, is it possible they'd see it differently, feel differently, and expect something different in terms of what they would consider fair and reasonable? And then you put a plan together and approach them based on your understanding of what would work with you and what might be different for them. And then, to the best of your ability, you're as authentic as you can be, and you put a plan together that makes sense to you, and you try, and you implement. And like any plan, you modify as needed. So those are a few things I'd like to talk about today. And again, a reminder, next week I'm not here, but I have a show that I'd love for you to listen to, especially if you have somebody that's going off to college for the first time next year. I think you'll love the show. And if you know anybody that's got kids who are going off to college next year, or the kids themselves, and they have a chance to tune in to 12 o'clock to 1 o'clock next Wednesday, I encourage you to listen to the show. Thank you. All right. Again, you're listening to Chuck Wolf. This is the Emotion Roadmap. Take the wheel and control how you feel. Take the wheel and control how you feel. Now, for those of you who are regular listeners, you know the routine, what the show's about. But for those of you who might be new, might be driving through, or just happen to be home and turned on WPKN and you caught my show, this is Chuck Wolf, and it's the Emotion Roadmap, and the show's about helping people manage their emotions and their emotional relationships with others, helping you influence the emotions of others. So, how do we do that? Well, potentially, if you've got something on your mind where you're uncertain, where you're somewhat confused or worried about how you might approach a situation, if you're stuck, and you don't usually get stuck, you're somebody who's got a pretty good problem solver normally, and pretty good critical thinker, and I like to think most of the people listening to my show have all those things going for them. But when you're stuck, it's often, in my experience, that something emotional is happening inside of you. And the Emotion Roadmap, the concept, the Emotion Roadmap, is about this idea that we can take more responsibility, have more control over the emotions that we feel and that others feel. So we can have more control over how we feel and more control over our ability to influence others. If we're thoughtful specifically about the emotions that are in play. So, for example, if you're having a conflict with a neighbor, a co-worker, someone you work for, someone who works for you, someone in your family, a family member. Conflict is one of those places where emotion is always present, sometimes to a more or lesser degree, depending on what the conflict's about. But when you're uncertain how to proceed, then one of the things you want to think about is, how am I feeling about this? How is the person I'm having the conflict with, or about to have the conflict with, how is he or she feeling about this? So it starts with kind of like, what is? We identify emotionally what somebody's experiencing and what we're experiencing ourselves. And then we ask, okay, that's what is, that's what's present, but in our future, if we wanted to really get this done correctly as best we can, what would be ideal for a person to feel? So what is what we are feeling and what we believe the other person is feeling. What is ideal is what we would hope the person is feeling and what we would be feeling. And then how do we create that? So the emotion roadmap is, how do we go from what is, which if it isn't, it might be very helpful, so you don't have any problem and you just move forward. But if it's something that you're not certain about, then chances are the feelings you're having are not as helpful as they might be. And at which point I suggest to you, then let's talk about what would be ideal to feel and how do we get there? How do we get from anxious to confident? How do we get from sad to satisfied or calm or happy even? How do we move from one emotion to another? How does that happen? And then we put a plan together. And the plan is based on what makes sense to you and to what you believe would make sense to the person that you're dealing with or will be dealing with. And we do that together. And in doing that together, we're teaching everybody how to use this concept called the emotion roadmap. So I'm hopeful that we have callers, because that always makes the show more interesting, who've got something they want to share, something that we're trying to make a decision or handle a conflict or change how somebody's thinking and behaving, change how you're thinking and behaving yourself. Procrastination is a great case of where it's self-imposed, right? This is not about somebody else. This is about me waking up in the morning knowing I've got 6 really important things to do and then not getting them done. Not because I didn't have the time, but because I got distracted and I procrastinated. And then at the end of the day, feeling bad about, gee, what happened to the day? How come I didn't get it done? So that's about changing your own behaviors, right? So let me give you a chance to call, and then we'll talk some about some of these other topics. When we don't get callers, I always like to have something to chat about so that the hour feels like it's well spent for anybody that's tuning in every time. So let me give you the number to call, and if you're interested in sharing something with me that's going on in your life, remember 2 things. One is, hopefully I can help you. And I help you for 2 reasons, just to be clear. Well, the first reason is I love helping people. All my life, one of the things that's important to me is helping others. One of the reasons for doing this radio show for 10 years now is that I believe the emotion roadmap is something that I discovered working with the pioneers in emotional intelligence. It's been well received all over the world, and it's actually talking to all kinds of people about using it in a variety of ways, which will be fun to talk about on another show. But the concept is something I'd like to teach everybody, because I think one of the things that happens if you really learn how to use the emotion roadmap effectively is you generate inner peace for yourself. Because the thing that stirs up restlessness and anxiousness and internal conflict is often because we don't know how to manage our own emotions. And the emotion roadmap is a guide to being more effective at doing that. Now, there's other tools. This isn't the only one. Mindfulness is one, for instance, that seems to work. Meditation is helpful. All the standards for, rest, nutrition, good habits, healthy habits, exercise. I mean, they're all pieces of a large puzzle. But the emotion roadmap is not one that people knew about in the past, because it's actually something I created. And I created it because in working with the pioneers of emotional intelligence, I learned that we actually have science that supports that some emotions are better than other emotions for a particular task. Now, we don't have like a book that says, okay, if this is the task, this is the emotion. we have more general principles around certain kinds of emotions influence thoughts, and those thoughts influence certain behaviors. So that for a particular task, and I've given different examples of this over the years on the show, that there are some that we know, some emotions that are particularly better suited for specific tasks that are well documented. But most of the time, if we just think about it, it seems somewhat obvious to me that we can actually understand what emotion would be best for a particular task. It's not always obvious, but when we stop and reflect about it, it becomes more obvious. And if we're thoughtful about it, even when it's not obvious, we often can find ourselves identifying what would be ideal to feel. And then realizing that what we are feeling, what we are currently experiencing, is not what we need to experience. The idea of take the wheel and control how you feel is what the show's about, teaching you that you can be in more control of your emotions. And so I do the show in part because I want people to have that skill and knowledge. Because I think when we create inner peace, then it's easier, I'm hoping, I have this belief, it's a hypothesis, not proven, but it's a belief that when we have more people with inner peace, it's easier to create world peace. So I want to change the world one person at a time. And so if you're listening, I hope you're trying really hard to understand how to use this concept called an emotion roadmap. And the second reason that I want to do the show is that actually I believe I can help people in just a few minutes often by understanding their situation. And when I focus on the emotions, what seems to happen is sometimes options appear that even if they've been going to a therapist at times, these options have not been talked about or discussed or thought about. And sometimes these options make great sense to them. And at least in a few experiences, I've had callers call back after they've gotten some guidance from me, and the guidance has worked splendidly well for them. And it's just really a pleasure to get feedback when somebody's had something really go right as a result of them talking to me. So in part, I want to help the whole world learn how to use this. And your call helps everybody listen and learn that. And two is I'd like to help you because I like helping people. It really is, it's what I love the most is when I can help somebody. So the number to call is 203-336-9756. 203-336-9756. And I'll give you a minute. 203-336-9756. So if you've got something you'd like to talk to me about, this is the time to call in. I've got a bunch of time. I'm here till 12:55, and here's our first caller. Hi, this is Chuck Wolf. You're on the air. Who's calling, please?
Hi, can you hear me?
I can hear you fine. Thank you so much for calling back.
Thank you. I think that was a sign, man. I was trying to reach you, trying to reach out to another human being, and you know what happened.
Yeah, well, it's a learning for me. I actually had the one button not pressed that I should have pressed, so wasn't the phone system. My bad. I'm sorry about that. I'm sorry. Can I have a name that I can address you by?
You can call me Long Island.
Long Island. Okay, Long Island. Thanks. How can I help you today?
Well, you know, I'd just like to hear your opinion. I grew up in a family where it was a very controlling environment, you know.
Uh-huh.
I had a mother who was very controlling, 3 older brothers who were very controlling. And now, like, every day, I'm still anxious. Like, you know, I'm like someone's watching me. Like, I'm always doing something wrong, you know?
Yeah.
And it's hard for me to say this, man. I just like to hear how you can help me, please.
Sure. Well, let me just. I mean, you've been dealing with this for a long time, and I always, anything that might be really obvious that I might say, you probably already thought about. So let me do this with you. If I could get a little more history, if you had 3 older brothers that were really controlling, and you had a mother that was really controlling, then how have you been operating on your own for all these years?
I think they kicked the crap out of me and made me stronger.
Okay, that's interesting. Okay, so part of it was getting beaten down, made you have to rise back up again, and that's working for you a bit?
My brothers used to kick my ass every day. That was their sport, you know.
Okay, so that was, I mean, it's not a fun sport, but I think older brothers tend to do that with younger brothers, but you're talking about it like it's been a lifelong kind of problem for you, right?
Well, yeah, I still, I wake up in the middle of the night and, I'm feeling anxious, like someone's watching me, you know?
Feeling like somebody else is paying attention to what you're doing and judging you?
Yeah, judgment, right.
Okay, so what have you already done or tried to do to offset this? Because I'm sure you've been trying for years to try and get rid of this.
Meditation is my main action.
And that works somewhat for you?
It does help, that's for sure.
Okay. So part of it is when you wake up and you're feeling anxious, and the anxiety you feel like you're pretty clear it comes from those experiences growing up. Is there something that might trigger? I mean, is it every night or is it just like on an occasion?
It's like all of a sudden I feel like I'm running really fast and I don't want to. You know what I mean? I'm just in motion and it just feels strange.
So the concept of the show is about, if you're feeling something that's not helpful, and I get it, the reason I was asking the questions was that, when you're feeling the way you are, something drives it. In other words, something's happening to you, either in your own mind, you're making it up, or something real might trigger it. That's why I was wondering, have you ever noticed anything that triggers that kind of response for you? Because that's helpful to know if there is.
I don't think so. I think it's just like it's ingrained in me.
Just kind of pops up every once in a while.
Yeah.
Okay. So then when it does pop up, how do you deal with it today?
Well, like if I wake up in the middle of the night, I'd try and go back to sleep, I'd meditate and just breathe, and that's all I can do.
And that sometimes works? So you ever just end up staying up and not being able to fall back to sleep?
There are times where I'm up for a few hours, yeah, but eventually I'll pass out,
Okay. All right. So the key idea here is when you wake up and you feel anxious and you recognize the anxiety, what would you rather feel?
I'd rather feel at peace.
So you want to feel peaceful and you're feeling anxious. Let me ask you, and this is really important, and again, I'll call you Long Island. So if you think Long Island about any experience that you've ever had in your past where you really were very successful, or at least somewhat successful, changing an anxious experience that you had into a peaceful one, it's come from meditation. Anything else that you can think of that helps with that?
I like meditation pretty much.
Okay. So you're looking for some other tools though, right? I mean, that's the other thing.
Well, yeah, I mean, like, is there something that you've heard of that can make people feel better when they're just anxious all the time?
Well, if you listen to me, one of the things that I would say is, sure, I know what works for me, but that's not necessarily what's going to work for you. That's my point. One of the things that's helpful along the lines of understanding how this concept of an emotion roadmap works is knowing if you've ever had the experience of just saying, hey, you know what, I'm feeling anxious again, and I don't want to feel that way anymore, and I'm not going to.
I like that.
And I'm not going to. So, I mean, but then what do you do with it? I mean, so you can say that, but it may not have any real meaning, right? There's nothing attached to that, except if you attach something yourself to it. Now, if I can offer some thoughts to you, it's things that might work for you.
Cool.
But again, my guess is you've been in spots at times where you've been anxious, you didn't have time to meditate, and yet you push past it and you're okay. Am I wrong about that?
No, I'm sure. I do that every day.
So my point is, what is at the heart of doing that? Because there might be some essence that you might be able to build on that would work for you when you wake up in the middle of the night, which is different than being in the middle of something that you just say, you know what, I can't be anxious right now. It's just not going to help me. I got to get something done, and you just push past it. Is there some way or something in that helps you ever?
But definitely. I mean, I guess I have some inner strength, I guess. I'm making it through,
Right. Can you flag any of them? Can you identify any of them? Because a part of that is if you can.
My strengths? Yeah, of course.
Well, go ahead.
I don't want to tell you, man.
Well, it helps me to help you.
I'm a talented person. I'm a very artistic person, and I know those are my strengths. I play music, and I entertain people. I do.
Okay, so part of this is like you're an entertainer, and music and art, so artistic endeavors are things that quell the anxiety in you. I mean, that's when you're doing those things, you're feeling pretty good about who you are.
Oh, when you're on stage, I mean, people love you.
Can you actually think about being on stage, possibly, in the moment when you wake up and you're feeling anxious, Here's my point. So just so you understand, this doesn't sound crazy to you. One of the things that I learned over the years is that sometimes when you're feeling anxious or upset, and you want to feel really good about yourself because you need to feel more confidence than you're feeling, there's something. The technique was called an emotional immune shower. You pour over yourself the feelings that you have when you're in a wonderful place, having a great experience, and you just try and remember and recall being in that moment.
Totally.
And just feeling those feelings, so that you feel like it's like a really good shower feels. Only it's a shower of all the positive emotions experienced when you were in a place where you felt great.
Yeah, I can totally relate to that because of the whole acting thing. That's what actors do. You have to recall a moment, and if you have to cry, you have to recall a sad moment.
Right. Exactly. So if you're experienced with that, then it's possible that you can generate a different emotion in yourself when you wake up and you find you're anxious and you say, okay, I've been here before, I know what to do.
I have to tell you, I love what you're saying, except there's something in me that my father was an actor, right?
Yeah.
So I know what acting is.
Yeah.
So, like, when you tell me I have to act happy when I'm sad, I'm going to feel like a fake.
No, I understand. So it's not authentic.
That's what I'm thinking. Like, when you tell me when I wake up anxious, I should think about when I was on stage and have that happy thought. I'm going to feel like an actor, like I'm faking.
Well, let me tell you, that I understand exactly what you're saying, and a lot of times people in their work life, they act all the time. Nurses, when they come in to see somebody and they just found out that that a credit card, that something happened in the financial world that's terrible at home, but they have to come in and they want this person who just found out they got cancer to feel good about being in this hospital with them at this moment. And so a lot of people act,
yes,
right?
Yes. Totally.
But this is a little different. Long Island, because what I'm saying here is I'm not asking you to make something up. I'm asking you to relive something real.
Cool. I like that.
Right? This isn't you didn't make up how you felt on stage.
Yeah, I like that. You're absolutely right.
So it's a little different, right? So now all of a sudden, I'm not asking you to be unreal here. I'm saying, look, I know anxiety is a crippler for me for a lot of years. It's been something that's haunted me all my life. But I'm going to find a way to deal with it in a constructive way. And one of the ways I'm going to do that is when I wake up, I'm just, if I need it, I'm going to pour this immune shower over me, not based on acting in the sense of creating something that's false, but remembering and recalling a moment in time when my strengths were in full force and I felt great and people felt great because of what I was doing for them.
I'm smiling right now, man. Thank you.
Okay. So that helped?
Yes, I am very, very glad what you just said.
All right, so you got something, right?
Yeah, I sure did, man. Thank you.
You bet. Take care, Long Island. Thanks for the call.
Have a great day.
You too. Bye-bye. So that's how it works, everybody, right? So it's like you focus on emotions and you just understand what it is emotionally that's going on for you, and then you try to look for your own strengths, and you try and figure out how can you use your strengths. And I can tell you my strengths, and I can tell you what I do, and maybe that's helpful to you, but when it's your own idea and you can build on your own plan, it's awesome. Because you know how that felt, and it felt real to you, and that's one of the techniques. One of the beauties of doing this show is I've had a lot of experiences of a long lifetime now, and hopefully it all kind of plays out. One of the things that works for me if I'm feeling something I want to change or helping somebody else feel a little differently about something sad maybe is humor. I love humor. I'll share a story with you real quick. So I have this uncle that I adore. He's 88 years old now, and he's had memory problems recent years, and so he had to stop driving, which was huge, right? Yeah, it's one of the hardest things is when you have to give up your keys, and your independence really is how it feels. And so I call him today because I call him. I try to call him once a month or something, just to stay in touch and say hello. And I like reliving old memories because he's really good at remembering things from the past and things that really are easy for him to talk about. So my mom was his sister, and so we talk about my mom, and He was very friendly with my dad, so we talk about my dad, both of whom are deceased. But it's fun for me, too. I'm not just doing it for him. I enjoy it. But one of the things he said to me today was, he said, Chuck, I'm losing half my marbles. And I said to him, Uncle, did you ever play marbles when you were a kid? Because I was sure he had, because I played them. And now some of you who are very young listening to the show don't even know there's a marbles game out there. There used to be anyway. And used to compete for, if you don't know how the game works, you compete. You play against other people and you put at risk the marbles you have versus the marbles somebody else has. And sometimes marbles were beautiful to look at. And, sometimes you'd get somebody's really beautiful marble and somehow that was a win. But you also could lose marbles right in the game. You could lose to another person you're playing with. And so I asked him, I said, so Uncle, do you remember playing marbles? And he said, yes, I do. And do you remember what moonies are? And I said, I think there was a special kind of marble. Is that right? He said, yeah, they were the clear ones. And I said, oh, okay. I said, well, Uncle, I just want to suggest to you that you don't play marbles anymore with anybody. He said, what do you mean? He said, well, I don't think you can afford to lose anymore. And he laughed and I laughed. So trying to take something that's sad and just smile about it because you want to just feel good with a person that you're with that you care about. So sometimes humor is another way to offset anxiety and sadness in a positive way. So anyway, if you got something on your mind that you'd like to call in and talk about, the number is 203-336-9756. 203-336-9756. Okay? I'll give you a minute. Hi, this is Chuck. You're on the air. Who am I talking to, please?
Is this for me? Yeah.
Oh,
Whoa.
Could you turn your radio down?
Oh, good point. I knew there was something I was supposed to do, but I forgot.
That's okay. You want to give me a name I can call you by?
Yeah, Donna.
Donna, thanks. Okay.
So here's what I was thinking when you were talking to that man.
Uh-huh.
In addition to saying that it's really not pretending, I think what you're saying also is that it's actually restructuring your brain.
It's another way of thinking about it. Reframing your brain, restructuring your brain.
Not just for that moment. Doesn't it actually, it's like when you have a muscle and you exercise that muscle and somebody moves it for you, even though you're not moving it yourself, it strengthens the muscle. I think what you're proposing is that if you do it often enough, you're actually changing the structure of your brain.
What synapse connects to another? Yeah, what neurons connect to different neurons? You're changing pathways in your brain. I'm not an expert in that, but I'm sure you're right. And I actually have a colleague of mine, a friend, who I'm going to have on, sometime later in the summer, and his name's Richard Boyatzis. He talks a lot about that. So I'm sure you're onto something there. I can't say for certain, but I believe you're right.
So that whoever that guy, if he's still listening, that could be helpful for him to understand. He's not just pretending; he's actually potentially structuring his brain differently. And it's interesting what you said to him because last night there's a Dr. Amen who was on public TV. I don't know if you know of him, and he was saying a very similar thing to you. He was saying that you should go around, think of 10 positive experiences of your life, and attribute them a place in your house. And I'm not exactly sure I get that, but when you're not happy, or in order to increase your happiness, as you move through the house, you think of these happy things. And I think if you researched him, that he would maybe where I got the idea about actually restructuring your how your brain works.
Well, thank you for the reference. I'm not sure I understand it totally, but I do know that there are things in my home, and I suspect in your own, that remind you of moments in time that were special. There's, one of the things that people have created now are these frames with pictures that rotate digitally, right? So you can update them constantly, and they just bring smiles to people's faces because they constantly recall different memories. And I suppose what you just said is, you can create a plan in your home for certain moments in time that really are special to you, and you can spend some time in that spot in your house when you feel the need.
Yeah.
I mean, it makes some sense.
I think he may even, I would go so far as to say he may be saying that since you're associating spots in your house with positive things, that you're healing your brain. I mean, that's his whole thing, is healing your brain as you go through the space. So, I don't know, I think from what you're saying, and this is literally the first time I ever listened to you. I just happened to have the station on from last night. I think if you get in touch with his work, you would enjoy it a lot from what I've heard you say so far.
Well, thanks a lot. I'm actually, there's a lot of people's work that I enjoy a lot, so he's probably another one. I think I actually do know his name. Is he from California? Do you know?
I'm not really sure, but he's got like 7 different places he goes. He specializes in the brain, and you can go and have pictures made of your brain.
Yeah, I know. I've actually heard about him many years ago, and I actually think he does some very interesting things. So I have been exposed a bit to his work. It's a little different than what I do, but I mean, it's related. You know, there's so many pieces to this puzzle of human behavior, but one of the things that I tend to focus on, if you're just a first-time listener, is we don't often think about our emotions except when they're overwhelming at times. And yet emotions are always in play. And so if we focus on how we are feeling and we realize that how we're feeling is not necessarily helpful anymore, usually feelings are part of our evolutionary system. So they respond to something that's happening inside of us, but they might be repeating old patterns that were developed when we were young kids, like Long Island's story about being controlled for so many years when he was younger, and that's still playing a role in his adult life. I mean, a lot of us have messages like that play out that are not necessarily helpful anymore. And so the emotions that were triggered by that aren't helpful. And so how do we change them? And that's the concept that I've created that I feel like is incredibly useful in my work in all kinds of ways, because almost every situation that has any consequence, a meaningful consequence attached to it, has emotion in it. And most of the time we just kind of go into those situations without a lot of planning emotionally about what we want to have happen. And I think when you plan emotionally, you have to be better. So that's the way I think about this.
Well, another connection that I make about all of this work is how we believe that the Bible has a lot of basic wisdom, and the Bible, one of the things the Bible tells us to do is renew our mind. And obviously, if you're studying the Bible, there's a lot of positive things that serve to do that, to renew your mind. But I think it's wonderful that, that's one of the basic tenets that we're encouraged to do when we study Christianity. Anyway, thank you for your time. God bless you.
Thanks a lot, Donna, for the call. I really appreciate your listening, and I hope you tune in again. Thanks so much.
Bye.
Okay, bye-bye. Religion has a lot of positives associated with it, and some of the wisdom in the books of different religions have a lot of value and come from a place where they are helpful, and then there are places where they're not so helpful too. A lot of different opinions out there about a religion, but I really appreciate your call, Donna, and thank you so much for your insights and your sharing. And I do believe, I think Dr. Amen is somebody that I'm familiar with. He's actually been doing work for a lot of years, and he was a real innovator and continues to be. And his brain scans were, when they first came out, from what I remember, there was a lot of mistrust and people in the established world of medicine didn't really trust them. But hey, there's a lot of things that we need to doubt until we have some proof things exist. But at the same time, there's a lot of holistic remedies that seem to work without a lot of lab experiments that support them, and yet lots of anecdotal experience over many years. So, we're trying to find our way as we weave through this world about what works, what doesn't. And I do know that in my experience, this emotion roadmap has worked in all kinds of ways. With teams, when a team isn't functioning correctly. With organizations, when their values are misaligned. In our country, with our democracy today. Sometimes there's lots of things where emotions, if we're able to manage our own emotions and we're concerned and respectful and understanding of other people's emotions, even when we disagree, again, The ultimate goal is world peace. The initial goal is individuals' inner peace. So if you got something you want to talk about, give me a call. 203-336-9756. And I'll give you a moment. 203-336-9756. So I don't have any callers right now, and that's okay because I did want to talk about procrastination a little bit. So let me share a couple of notes from this study. Willpower is a slippery concept. Some researchers believe it doesn't really exist. Some believe it exists, but in finite supply. Others choose a middle path. But so even if they choose a middle path, they don't always think it's as powerful as some people feel. He recommends cultivating another mental skill, mindfulness. The skills developed in mindfulness meditation, such as concentration, non-judgment, and equanimity, align perfectly with the research showing the vital role of emotional regulation in reducing procrastination and improving productivity. So mindfulness is helpful with emotional regulation. I think people who have done meditation and have learned the skills of mindfulness probably support that. I mean, that's my experience with them. And, building a little bit on what Donna said, a recent brain scan study found reduced activity in the amygdala. If you are familiar with Dan Goleman, who is like kind of the most he is the most well-known person in the world of emotional intelligence. I say well-known in the sense he has written the most books, published the most articles. He talks about the amygdala hijack, which is this center where emotions happen. And sometimes, for those of you that have had this experience, it's like kind of amazing, where you have an amygdala hijack, which is where you feel like you have an out-of-body experience, where you're looking down at yourself, seeing yourself behave in such a bizarre way, you can't even believe it's happening. And he feels like that's an amygdala hijack, where your emotions just totally take control and you're seemingly under control. So anyway, a recent brain scan study found reduced activity in the amygdala, an area that controls stress response, among a group that was trained in mindfulness meditation compared to two control groups. The amygdala is a region that can hijack our emotional response to a perceived threat, whether that threat is a mountain lion or a Slack notification sound. I'm not sure what a Slack notification sound is, but it could be something just minor, but our reaction to it is major because of, things like what Long Island experienced. Something triggers a memory from our past that all of a sudden the response is just way out of control to what just happened. Now, mountain lion, certainly that amygdala hijack where we fight back to try to survive and stay alive or run as fast as we can or hit out at an animal aggressor that we really probably don't have much chance at harming or stopping, but we do what we can to survive, and so all our energy goes into that response. But what if the response is seemingly totally inappropriate? Nothing really is threatening us that way. So anyway, the idea of procrastination as an emotional issue strikes me as something really powerful, because when we wake up in the morning and we say we've got 6 things we have to get done, what 6 things do we do in what order? In other words, do you take the things that are easiest? Do you take the things that are toughest? One of the people that mentored me over many years ago suggested that when you've got things on your list that you've got to get done in a given day, start with the toughest. Because if you use up whatever initial energy you have from, your restful night's sleep and your good breakfast and your beginning of the day and your basically high energy level, when you do some of the easy things, by the time you're through those, you don't have the same energy level. And some of your mental abilities and capabilities have been focused on things that weren't so tough, but they were draining. And now you take on that tough task and you find reasons to avoid it. I'm kind of tired. I can get to this tomorrow. I think I need a break. I'm going to take a little nap. I'm going to watch some TV. I'm going to read my emails. I'm going to look at the web, Facebook, Instagram, other social media. I mean, it's just like you can justify all of those things that seemingly have a purpose, but take away from the tasks that are most difficult and challenging for you. So when procrastination is billed as an emotion management issue, then the trick is to think about, what is it I'm feeling when I'm choosing not to do what I need to do? And what do I need to feel instead? What are the things that I've talked about in my experience and what I've written about in my publications and what I talk about on the radio and what I speak about when I'm a motivational speaker, is this idea that if we want sustainable behavior change, real behavior change, so if procrastination is an issue and we really want to change it so we're no longer procrastinating, or at least managing procrastination in a much better way so we're doing much less of it, we need SMART goals. We need behavioral goals. We need some specific tasks that we associate with changing the behavior. But mostly we need to change the self-talk and the feelings we have that keep us procrastinating. You want to understand, what is it you feel that's driving the self-talk that's causing you to do what you want to change, to procrastinate from changing behaviors or getting certain work done that you know needs to happen, and yet you haven't done it. I'd like to talk more about that, but maybe I'll do that when we come back in July, and we'll have more chance to talk. So let me again tell you, you've been listening to WPKN 89.5 FM in Bridgeport, serving Fairfield, New Haven, and Litchfield counties in Connecticut, and Suffolk County in New York's Long Island. And again, Long Island, thank you for the phone call. I hope that really works for you. And if it does work for you and you're really enjoying some peaceful, restful night's sleep, and then when you do wake up anxious, as Donna points out, you're strengthening that muscle that's tying the neuron that says, you know what, I can remember and recall real moments of contentment, of satisfaction, of even joy, and turn that around and allow myself to go back to bed peacefully. If that starts happening for you, give us a call back. We'd love to hear from you. So we serve all these places, and we stream around the world at WPKN.org. And you can also listen live to us when you're listening at WPKN.org, or listen to our archives, or listen to us on podcast, on SoundCloud, on iTunes, or on Stitcher. You can find my shows there. My 2 shows a month show up there every month. And you can also hear me on PRX, which is publicradioexchange.org. So I hope you've enjoyed the show, everyone. It's been a fun week for me. The hour's gone by pretty quickly. Thank you to Long Island, and thank you to Donna for the calls. And I wish you all a very good month. And don't forget, next week is about high school seniors graduating and going on to college, and the things you've got to anticipate and get ready for. Hope you enjoy that show too. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Funding for Simsbury Community Television is provided in part by contributions from viewers like you. Thank you.